Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this very special occasion, the 33rd day of the Omer, Lag BaOmer, commemorating a very special occasion of the passing of Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai, one of the greatest scholars of all time, the author of the Zohar HaKadosh, one of the greatest and most fundamental Kabbalistic works, which is world famous, of course, and stands as one of the greatest pillars of all of the esoteric, of all of Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, the secrets of the Torah. This day is a great day for Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai himself, although it was the day of his passing, which of course is a sad day when you lose your teacher, when you lose a parent, when you lose someone close to you. It's a sad day. But Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai himself said that this day is a day that should be celebrated, a day of joy and a day of happiness. He instructed everybody to rejoice on this day. Why is this day great? We know that when a tzaddik, when a righteous person completes his mission in the world, when he departs the world, he completes his mission in the world, and thus, for him, he has rectified everything that he had needed to rectify, and he had brought to the world all of the light that he needed to bring to the world. But in addition to this, on the day of his passing, Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai revealed teachings, sublime teachings of the Kabbalah, that were never ever revealed before, that the light was so blinding that his disciples could not take the light. That's how spiritually blinding the light was. The question that arises is, what sets him apart from the thousands upon thousands of great scholars that existed in our history? We have had immense scholars of the greatest of caliber. Yet something must set him apart by divine providence, that there are hundreds and thousands who will be tomorrow, tonight, in Israel's time, it'll be out tomorrow morning, but in Israel's time tonight, and during this whole period of time from night till tomorrow night, there will be probably over 300 to 400,000 people who are visiting his grave. Immense. Aside from that, that's because it's his anniversary. Aside from that, there are hundreds of thousands that visit his grave during the whole year, not on his anniversary, but during the whole year. So it's an immense amount of people, and this day itself has become a day that is part of the Jewish calendar. What sets him apart? What is his uniqueness? That although that there were other great and immense scholars, did not merit to have by divine providence this amount of attention, this amount of joy that is associated with his day of passing. So there must be something that sets him apart, some uniqueness that we can and must learn from this day and about this great scholar. The people that will be visiting his grave both today and both during the whole day, for we're talking about approximately 2,000 years since his passing. There has been millions and millions of people who have visited his grave during these 2,000 years. And the people who visit his grave are from the greatest of Kabbalists to the simple believer, scholars of the Kabbalah, scholars of Gemara, Sfaradim, Ashkenazim, people with ponytails and earrings, all find a source of comfort, a source of immense joy. And you know, joy is not a simple thing. I'm going to speak about it a little bit later. To be truly joyous and find joy within and happiness within is not a simple thing. Unfortunately, the majority of people find joy from trinkets, from physical things. We derive joy and happiness, gives us certainly from tranquility, certainly from our family, but from physical things. But that is fleeting joy. That's not true joy. That is not a joy that is eternal, that exists forever. It is a joy that lasts as long as that item gives us joy and happiness. True joy and happiness. People are going to the grave of Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai, and are rejoicing and are happy and are dancing and are singing for what? What are they dancing? The sense of joy that exists there is phenomenal, is unique. What are they happy? What are they happy about? This is obviously something that is extremely unique. To find true joy for no ulterior purpose is something that is extremely remarkable and unique. I would like to first commence with an interesting story the Gemara tells us in Masechet Shabbat. Interestingly enough, today is the 33rd day of the Omer, correct? Lamed Gimel, the 33rd day of the Omer. On page 33 in the Gemara, in Masechet Shabbat, it speaks about Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai. And as an interesting story told in the Gemara, for whatever reason we don't have the time to elaborate now because we have to pick and choose what we can speak about in the limited time that we have allocated tonight. It's extremely difficult to speak when you have the aroma of the cooking wafting in from the kitchen, and and people, we have a seudah, a meal in his honor. So I have a lot of competition. And so we have to be able to limit what we're going to speak about. So, being very brief, Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai and his son had to flee the Romans who were ruling Israel at the time, and they hid in a cave. And they hid in a cave for 12 years. And in those 12 years, they totally divested themselves of materialism. They totally divested themselves of physicality, to the extent that they purified themselves to such a degree that they were able to fathom and master and learn the greatest teachings and the deepest depths of teachings. And the Gemara tells us, and after this long amount of time, they were sustained by the most simplest of food, haruvim, a tree of carobs, and water that passed them by. 12 years later, they came out. And what they saw disappointed them and upset them. Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai saw that people, don't forget, he's coming from a state of mind that is totally divested from the materialism. And he saw and he looked around and he saw that there are people who are deriving joy and happiness and are from materialism, and are dependent upon materialism, the physical world, for their joy and their happiness and their tranquility and their sense of fulfillment. And this bothered him to no end and caused a great and deep level of disappointment, to the extent that this aroused divine judgment, destructive divine judgment of the people, because he, so to speak, judged them in a critical manner, in a critical way. He simply couldn't relate to people who are so dependent upon the material world for their happiness, for their joy. And all of a sudden he said, this is what people say, this is what is said of the wicked, that the wicked endure 12 months of purgatory, of suffering in purgatory, to cleanse themselves of their sins. And he returned back to the cave for another 12 months. This is a very perplexing story. Why is he at fault? What was the negativity? What was lacking in him that he had to return to the grave? It was the people around him. It was the generation that was weak. It was a generation that was perhaps sinful. It was a generation that were below the mark of expectations. Why him? Why did he see a deficiency within himself to the extent that he went back to the grave? He went back to the cave. If anything, he should have judged the people, because ultimately the deficiency was in them and not in him. And yet he judged himself and he went back to an interesting story. Why was that the case? We will soon find out. As I mentioned, there have been throughout history many scholars. There are scholars of the exoteric, the revealed, the halakha, the Gemara, the Mishnah. And then there are those masters of the esoteric, the secrets. Very few were experts. the highest of standards of both. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was from those few who was an absolute scholar and master of the highest degree of both the exoteric and the esoteric, the revealed, the halakha, the Gemara, the Mishnah, and also the secret, the Kabbalah. This is one of his uniqueness. But that's not it. That's not all. We know that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, there are many statements of the Talmud, of teachings, halachic teachings that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai taught us. And then we know that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai gave us a great gift of the Zohar HaKadosh, the book of illumination, one of the most basic, fundamental, Kabbalistic texts that is studied till this very day very deeply. Very few are complemented the way Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is complemented in various places, specifically in the Zohar HaKadosh, in the book of the Zohar, that was stated compliments about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai by his colleagues or his disciples. And I'm not going to go through all of them. I will just mention one, because each one needs an explanation for itself. What is the meaning of it? Why this compliment was used as opposed to another one? In other words, expressing his greatness. One of it is that Rabbi Yehuda Karile Shabbat. Rabbi Yehuda would call Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai Shabbat. Just like Shabbat is holy to Hashem, so is Rabbi Shimon holy to Hashem. Why Shabbat? What is the connection between Shabbat and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? Why specifically Shabbat? The obvious reason that we mentioned is because just as Shabbat is holy, so too is holy. But there must be something else as well, because festivals are also holy. As well, we know that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had the soul, was the reincarnation of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe, our master and our teacher. If that is the case, then there must be a connection between them. The lessons that we learn from both of them must correlate. Yet we find a very interesting contradiction, because Shabbat is the holiest day. Moshe Rabbeinu is the greatest of prophets. Yet we know, if you count it in the Sefirat HaOmer, in the counting of the Omer, we know that every day there are 7 attributes, and 7, each one of the 7 contains the other 7. And there are 49 days in total from the day after Pesach until Shavuot, which is a preparation for us to rectify, refine, and purify our 7 emotive attributes by which we express ourselves. Because the emotions are the ones that need to be rectified more than the intellectual aspects. The intellectual aspects are much more higher, nobler, they aspire to higher things, but the emotions can get caught up in desires, in pleasures, in anger, in jealousy, in greed, and these type of things, and they need to be rectified and purified, and each one of the 7 is unified from the other 7, so 7 times 7 equals 49. So for example, on the first week of the counting of the Omer, we work to rectify the attribute of kindness or love, and God forbid if that love or that passion was directed in the wrong way, the wrong things. So the first day is kindness within kindness. In other words, the most purest form of that attribute. The second is the attribute of justice and judgment within the attribute of kindness. And so on and so forth, all the 7 until you finish that week. And then you go to Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, Malchut. Now the emanations or the attributes are generally 7 emotives, but really they are 5 plus 2. 5 emotive attributes are really the main 5, and they are divided into the right, the left, and the middle, which means the right is kindness, the left is severity or judgment or harshness, and the middle is a harmony and a composite of the two in a harmonious, merciful, beautiful manner. And there are 5 in total. Hesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod. Yisod receives from those 5 and passes it on to the attribute of Malchut. So I'm not going to explain it now because that in itself takes time. But what I want to distinguish is that there are generally 5 that give over to the other 2. Therefore, Hesed is the highest of the 5. Then comes Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod. Hod is the lowest of them. And we find that tonight is the night by which we count, the counting of the Omer, the 33rd day, is Hod within Hod, which means the attribute, the lower of the 5 within the lower of the 5. In other words, this is a reflection of a lower attribute of the 5. So, for example, you have the right hand and the left hand. You have the right leg and the left leg. Hod of Hod kabbalistically signifies the left leg, which is much lower than the left with the right leg, kabbalistically speaking, which is much lower than the left hand, which is even much lower than the right hand. In other words, the right hand, the right leg is really kabbalistically speaking in attributes. It's just a symbolism, the right hand, the left hand. But we use it, it's a function, like the hand and the leg is a function, the attributes are also a function. So the right leg is deemed kabbalistically as an extension of the right hand, and the left leg is deemed as an extension of the left hand, which means that Hod, the attribute of Hod, which is splendor, is really, or strength, is a weakened form of that attribute of severity or strength, which is symbolized by the left hand. I know it's a little bit technical and Kabbalistic, but I just want to show to you, to express to you that on a Kabbalistic note, this is the lowest of the 5. Why is it then that the highest scholar, which we are celebrating today with such great amount of joy and happiness and such great adulation and qualities and is so complimented in so many places, his attribute or his soul is connected to the attribute of the lower of these emanations? You would think, if anything, Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai would be from the highest. His soul would be born in the highest of the attributes. Would you not think that? I would. The answer to that is found in a few places. One of them is called in a book called Divrei Shmuel. In Divrei Shmuel, he explains to us, for example, as a metaphor, the greatness of the sun. The sun is the greatest luminary that we know, that our physical world knows. And the sun illuminates in the most furthest and the most darkest of places, indiscriminately. Everywhere it lies, everywhere it illuminates. The power of the sun is very, very great. The more powerful something is, the further away it is able to illuminate and shine. So too, a great scholar, how do you see the greatness? How do you measure the greatness of the scholar? That he's able to draw it down and bring it down to the most simplest of persons. That a simple person is able, a scholar that cannot explain a deep thought, a deep idea to a child. Look at Rashi, the greatest scholar, one of the greatest scholars of Israel, Rabbeinu Shlomo Yitzhaki, the commentary of the Torah. He wrote a commentary that is so deep that the greatest of scholars debate his teachings, yet he wrote it in a manner by which a child, a 5-year-old child, can relate to. It's phenomenal. The greater the scholar, the more lower down he is able to bring something down. Kabbalistically speaking, this is like, it's explained, Kol hagavoa gavoa yoter, that which is higher falls down lower, so to speak, like a brick on the wall. The highest brick falls furthest away, so to speak. The apple that is highest, tallest on the tree falls furthest away from the tree. The greater something, what do they say? The greater they are, the harder they fall. So the point is that what defines greatness? What defines greatness is the ability to bring something down to a lowest level. Or a teacher or a scholar that is able to explain something to the most simplest of people. This defines the greatness of a scholar. This is the greatness of the sun. So too in regards to the tzaddikim, the righteous, are not only great because of their teachings, they are great because of their devotion and dedication and absolute selfless love and dedication to their people. And this is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai taught us. He was the reincarnation of Moshe Rabbeinu. What do we learn about Moshe Rabbeinu? We learn about Moshe Rabbeinu that although Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest of prophets, of which God revealed himself to Moshe Rabbeinu like no other, what do we find in regards to Moshe Rabbeinu? That he was the teacher to everyone. Not only was he the teacher to everyone, but when the Jewish people sinned in the sin of the golden calf, what did he do? He risked his life and he pleaded before them. Who were these people? These people were sinful people that sinned, people that erred. Although they were small in number, yet God wanted to, so to speak, remove them, banish them, remove them from the world. Moshe Rabbeinu pleaded on their behalf, and they said, if you just touch but one of them, mehenina misifrecha, wipe me off from your book. There shouldn't be no memory of Moshe Rabbeinu. I don't want to live. He was willing to plead their case for who? For people who rebelled against God. We're not talking about righteous people. We're not talking about Kabbalists. We're not talking about scholars. We're talking about sinful people. He pleaded on their behalf. Not only did he plead on their behalf, he could have said, well, finished. I did my job. I did the best that I could. No. He demanded from God that if you don't forgive them, forget about me. Because God said, I'll build a new nation from you. Can you imagine what a nation it will be? Everyone coming from Moshe Rabbeinu? How pure. Surely the Torah would endure in such a nation. No. Moshe Rabbeinu pleaded on behalf of people who were sinful to the extent that he was willing to be moser nefesh, to give up his own life on their behalf. This is the greatest of scholars. This is what defines the greatest of teachers. That their level of love and dedication is so great, is so deep, that it even descends to the lowest of people. The Holy Maggid of Mizrich would say, he was himself was a great Kabbalist and a great scholar and teacher, leader of leaders. I wish that I would be able to kiss the Sefer Torah, which is the holiest item that we have, with the same level of joy and of happiness and of love, like my teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, would embrace and kiss a child or a wicked person. You can well imagine what love the Holy Maggid would kiss a Sefer Torah, the most holiest of items. Who does not stand up before a Sefer Torah when we take it out? Who does not kiss a Sefer Torah? Who does not embrace it on Simchat Torah and dance with it with all of one's heart and embraces its teachings and the life that it has given us all and the endurance that it has given us all? Yet he said, I wish that I would be able to kiss a wicked person with the same amount of love that my master would embrace and accept a wicked person. This is the defining attribute of the greatest of scholars, that they are willing to sacrifice themselves for the purposes and the benefit, not for just another Jew, but someone with earrings, with a ponytail, or someone with a wicked person, someone who's a sinful person, to dedicate themselves to them as well. That is the greatness of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And this is the reason why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was born, passed away, on the day that exemplifies Hod Shebehod, which is the attribute, the lower attribute. Because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was able to bring down that love of God, or that illumination of God and the revelation of God like the sun, to the lowest of levels, to the lowest of attributes. And this is the greatness of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And this is the reason why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai himself was a reincarnation, had the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. To such an extent was the power of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai able to protect the generation and his love and dedication for the generation, that the Gemara in Sukkah, in Mesechet Sukkah and Tractate Sukkah, Daf Mem Hey, page 45, says, Yachol ani liftor et kol ha'olam min hadin. I am able to find merit for the whole world and remove it from harsh judgment from heaven. And that's why the Gemara in Yerushalmi in Masechet Brachot teaches us that in the days, that we don't point out a rainbow. We have a custom that we don't point out the rainbow. We don't say, look, there's a rainbow, even though we love a rainbow and even though we're all tempted to say there's a rainbow. And there's a special bracha we say for a rainbow. But we don't point it out. Why? Because it's a beautiful thing. And the rainbow, what it represents, a covenant from God that He will never again bring a flood to the world. Correct? But it's a reminder of the sin. And God said that if any time the generation will be wicked or sinful, I will recall the covenant that I made through the rainbow. Which means if there's a rainbow, it's not a good sign. Which means we're not that kosher. In other words, we are surviving because of the covenant that God made. Strictly by God's kindness, not because we are deserving. Not because of justice. Not because we are deserving, rightfully so, but rather because of God's mercy, God's covenant. So the rainbow is a beautiful sign, but it really reminds us that we're not so great. In the generation of Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai, the Gemara tells us that there was never a rainbow during his lifetime, to show that his merit protected the generation and brought merit, didn't need the covenant of the rainbow. His merit was enough. So we find that Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai in the Zohar many times emphasizes the following idea. The Zohar says, in the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai, Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai would say that if we only knew how much Hashem loved us, every single one of us, no matter how lowly we may be, no matter which level or station we may be at, if we only understood and appreciated how much God truly loves us, in those days they wore long garments, we would lift up our garments and run to God's embrace. Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai emphasized the love and compassion that God has for every single one of us. And when you illuminate a generation and you illuminate people with this idea and inspire them with this idea, this in turns our heart to God and brings benevolence and kindness and mercy to ourselves, to our families, and to the whole world. And this Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai emphasized many times. The love, the compassion, the kindness of God. And thus Bnei Yisachar writes about this wondrous thing of Lag BaOmer, a phenomenon. The phenomenon is that you don't see such joy and happiness at any other grave, at any other righteous person, although you see, and there is, but not to this degree of Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai on this day. The amount of joy. You go on YouTube tonight, and you put in Miron, Lag BaOmer, Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai, you will see the amount of dancing, the amount of joy, the amount of celebration. It's phenomenal. You don't see it anywhere. How? Why? Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai taught us the true joy. And this he says, Bnei Yisachar writes, that this is a miraculous phenomenon. It's beyond nature. Where do you get such joy? Usually there's a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of sadness, a lot of depression in the world. There's a lot of issues. People have issues. People have things that concern them. Worries. Everybody has got worries. Everybody's got issues. It's hard to find true joy. And especially if our joy, like Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai found when the first time he came out of the cave, that people were very materialistic, and that joy was defined and came from the materialism of the world, was dependent upon them like a drug. Yet we find at his grave an unbelievable amount of joy. Do you know why? Because true joy stems from our essence, our core. The fact that we have a soul, and that soul is a part of God. That is not dependent upon any ulterior thing. That is where we find true joy. If a person is able to enter his inner core and his inner being, which is intertwined and connected to the love and compassion that God has for us and God himself, that's where you find true joy. And this is what Rabbi Shimon bar Yohai taught us. He taught us the esoteric, the secret, that which lies deeply within the Torah, within the world, the secrets of creation, the secrets of our soul. What is the composition of our soul? Which levels is it connected to? That's where you find true joy. Commensurate with that, we see, since he taught us how to find joy within, and true joy is not natural, it's beyond. True joy is beyond nature. It's beyond the limitations of our materialistic world, because there's a lot of problems and issues that weigh us down, that don't allow us to be joyous truly unless we find joy within. And that endures. Just on the topic of joy and depression, you'll find on our website, you'll find a lecture just on that. So I'm not going to explain that a lot, because I've already explained before. You can have a look on our website under Shiurim. Not the YouTube, I don't think it has been uploaded yet. On the Safari website under Shiurim, what do you call it? Vocal Shiurim, what do you call it? Audio Shiurim. Thank you so much. True joy. How to reach a state of true joy. And he, like no other, was able to teach us that true joy doesn't come from materialism, because he was 12 years with his son in a cave that totally divested himself of all materialism. But when he came out, he couldn't relate to such a world. He couldn't relate to the world with their deficiencies, and thus was aroused great judgment. But he didn't look at it as a deficiency in the nation. He saw it as a deficiency within himself. Because if you could not arouse God's mercy and God's love and love to God within the people and joy within the people, that means the deficiency was within him. And that is why he went back into the cave. He felt that he was not yet ready to encounter the generation, the problems that people have, the issues that people have, and their dependency on materialism, and lift them up without judging them harshly. He wasn't ready. And therefore he set upon himself the judgment of the wicked in purgatory in Gehenna is 12 months. The deficiency is within me. For I am not able to see yet this level of joy, this level of love, this level of goodness in everyone yet. He returned back to the cave for another 12 months. And when he came out with a totally different attitude, like that of Moshe Rabbeinu, willing to sacrifice his very life, his very being, his very core, and dedicated his life to teaching and uplifting and illuminating and bringing joy and God's love to everyone, inspiring everyone. And that is why today people go to his grave and are inspired by his grave. There's a sense of joy, there's a sense of aura, simply because it comes from our souls, which he taught us. It comes from the depth of our souls, and it comes from the Almighty God. It is an unnatural joy that you don't find it. You don't find this level of joy. And that is exactly why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is called Shabbat. Because Shabbat is not only just a holy day. There's an interesting verse that says, Ushmartem et ha-Shabbat ki kadosh. You shall guard the Shabbat, for it is holy. Shabbat hu lachem. It is a Shabbat for you. Lachem, for you. What is lachem for you? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai taught us, what is the uniqueness of Shabbat? The uniqueness of Shabbat is, ordinarily during the 6 days of the week, we have to be very cautious not to be gluttonous, not to be overindulgent indulgent in the physical world, in the material world, because it could pull us down. We can become dependent upon it, like a drug. Our joy should never be dependent upon materialism, the meals, the food, the wines. On Shabbat we are commanded to rejoice specifically with food, with drink, with meats, with wine, whatever it is that you like. If you're vegetarian, tofu. If you like fish, whatever it is that you like. Put it out there. Enjoy a nice bottle of wine. How so? The Torah doesn't want us to be overindulgent. On Shabbat it commands us to. Why? Even the lachem, the for you, that which is yours, the material dimension on Shabbat can be uplifted, as it says in Tikkunei Zohar. When Shabbat enters the world, it becomes dislodged and dislocated from the impurities, there is no danger, there is no risk. Everything that we eat on Shabbat is lofty, is holy. Even the lachem, even the materialism, even the physicality becomes a tool for holiness. It becomes Shabbat hu lachem. It becomes even the lachem, the yours, the what's yours, the material, the family, the house, the food, the drink. Relationships becomes Shabbat, becomes holy. This is why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yohai, amongst many qualities and many compliments, was called Shabbat. Rabbi Yehuda Kari le Shabbat. Rabbi Yehuda called Rabbi Shimon Bar Yohai Shabbat because he did the same function as Shabbat. Just as Shabbat, he's able to take the ours, what is ours, the lachem, that which is yours, and make it into holy, make it into Shabbat, and make it into a way of service of God, like the Kohanim in the temple. They took the materialism of the world and they uplifted it and presented it as a gift, so to speak, to God. They uplifted the physical material world, the animal dimension of the world, the pleasures, the desires, the passion of the world. And they brought it up on the altar as a sacrifice for Hashem. To refine the world, to bring it up, to uplift it. This Shabbat does, like the Kohanim. What the Kohanim do in the temple, this is what Shabbat does. So the lachem, the yours, the material part of you, of yours, becomes holy, becomes Shabbat. This is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yohai was able to do, not only to himself, but was able to inspire others as well. To turn the lachem, that which is yours, the lowest dimension of ourselves, and utilize it as a tool to serve God, to find joy within the mitzvot that we have, within the festivals that we have, within the holy days that we have, within the family structure, within the meals that we have, the guests that we invite, the food that we eat. And find true joy and true happiness through that. The inner dimension that exists on Shabbat, the inner dimension that exists within my soul, the inner dimension that brings forth true joy. This is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yohai taught us. And this is why he was called Shabbat. And this is all through the revelation, the great revelation of the Zohar HaKadosh, the book of illumination that he taught to the whole world, which is being explained and expressed. Even those that can't learn or don't learn the Zohar, the book of illumination, directly, it's influenced the thought process. It is inspired. It has been taught. Ideas from it has been expounded in different books and different scholars and different teachers throughout these 2,000 years, and inspired people and has taught people to find the inner joy, the true depth of our core, of who we are and what we are, and the true depth of the world, and to find God even in the lachem. To find spirituality and joy even in the material, even in the lachem. This is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yohai. This day is expressed through the lowest of the attributes, as we mentioned before, the question that we asked. Because he's able to draw down light, a great light like the sun, in the darkest corners of the world. Zchutot again alenu, may his merit in this holy day bring upon all of us illumination, inspiration, to know God's love, that how much love and compassion he has for us, to, so to speak, lift up our garments and run to the embrace of God, run to the embrace of God's mitzvot, and be able to bring upon every single one of us, because this today is a very holy day, very special day, and we should take the time to ask Hashem for blessings. May Hashem bestow upon all of us good health and happiness and everything that we need, all of the blessings that we need, sustenance, parnasah, wealth and happiness, both physically, materially, and spiritually as well. Amen. Please join us next door for a meal in honor of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yohai.